Um, Hi, Monica. It is so good to see you. And as I was just telling you, it's yeah, I mean, you manage to look so fresh even in the evenings. So it's always so refreshing to have a call with you and get to know you even better with each call. And since you have such an inspiring story and you're working towards making our food better, nutrition, I'm a vegetarian. I always struggle with nutrition. And so I'm so excited about what you're building, not only for the US, but also for the world. And would love to have you share your story with everyone else. So why don't you get started? We would love to know more about you, about what you're building, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was so excited when you contacted me because I'm from India. I was born and raised in India, in Delhi, and I always wanted to have that connection back. And I thought that maybe with the company it would grow stronger. So really excited that you knocked on my door, let me share my story. Hopefully it'll reach people like you and I. That's kind of my intention here. So yeah, would love to share a little bit. Maybe I can start a little bit about me and then why I started Equi, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Sounds great. Yeah. So, Shreya, I was born in Delhi. I was raised in Delhi. uh, um, I just feel lucky that all of that like happened because my parents and my brother and we were a small family, but my parents always were very progressive. So I was really fortunate to have a great education in India. I was able to study at IIT Delhi. And the thing about that is, we think of IIT, at least back in the day, it was all about, conventional fields of engineering. So I actually studied biochemical engineering, which I think even at the time, IIT was trying to figure out what that was. The field was so new. But now thinking and reflecting back, 20 years ago, all of that happened. I felt like I got the best out of it. This is something that excites me. I've been working in the field of biotech for last 20 years. And especially, actually, I've kind of exclusively worked in the field of sustainability. So through that, I have done, oils for our cars, for our food. I have done proteins. I've done a bunch of different things that brought me here. I know a lot about, how to make sustainable products, and ultimately there came a point in my life I felt like I need to use all these skills to make something that's sustainable but also nutritious. So my goal with Equi is to make nutrition easy, and so here I am trying to make staples healthy so we can eat the same way we always eat, but get a little bit more joy, get a little bit more satisfaction and nutrition out of it. So that's who we are.
That's great. And can you tell us more about Equi and what are you doing? What's new? You talked about fermentation earlier. Would love to know what's going on.
Yeah, so we are a food tech company. What we are trying to do, if I can explain it very simply. So, in India, we have things like dosa or fermented foods. In Korea, there's kimchi. Around the world, there's different kind of fermented foods. So the point is, humans have eaten fermented foods for hundreds and thousands of years. So there's a whole biology that's now well understood. But mostly that technology has been used either to generate flavor or to generate texture, like in a bread, or maybe in some cases like alcohol, right? So what I thought, okay, how about we use the same technology, like fermentation of food, but instead of making any of these, we take it all the way and make good protein. So when I say good protein, that's actually a very central point of our existence, is to create protein that's good for muscle building, that's good for lean body weight management, satiety, etc. So what we're doing is we're using fermentation of food as a platform, if you will, and then utilize that to create healthy protein by fermenting grains. So at the end of the day, when we finish fermentation, the grains have 30 to 40% of good protein inside of it. slightly less carbs than you started with. So instead
Yeah.
of, 70-80% carbs, there's only like 40-50% carbs. So it's low carb, high protein flour, and then we use the flour to make staples. We are starting with bread because we felt like bread was a universal favorite. And after bread, we want to extend the platform to create healthy pasta, healthy tortilla or roti. That's my favorite. That would be a day for me. But you name it, any kind of staples, that's up our alley. So that's the game plan here.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited. And I don't know if you remember, but the last time we spoke, I told you how I started or really like tried to condition my mom because I'm a Jain and I wanted to start eating eggs for my protein requirement. And my mom really like she wasn't really happy about it. But I'm
Mhm.
excited that you started off with bread, which is like so important. I think one thing that I always struggle with is to really identify what is the best protein, right? Because if you go to Amazon for a newbie like me, I go to Amazon and I type plant protein because that's all I know. I've been told that whey is not good, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that's just what I hear from people, what I read up. But how do you identify what is the right protein and why did you choose grains?
That's an excellent question because you how you think, Shreya, I really like. You're very analytical. You're very advanced. You're always thinking of health first, and that's a great attitude, right? We
Yeah.
have to start there. So to answer your question, and I want to just make a disclaimer here that I'm not like an expert
Yeah.
but my kind of scientific education has taught me that so how you determine whether a protein is good is based on a score, and that score is recognized internationally by, for example, United Nations or Food and Agriculture Organization, various organizations around the world. And what it does is it gives a score to protein. So good proteins have a score of 1. Now, if you were to Google search for high quality proteins, what you will find in that list is practically 99% of those proteins would be either coming from, meat or fish, or
Yeah.
coming from eggs, or coming from milk. So to your point, when you go look on the Amazon, you would find plant-based proteins and you would find animal-based proteins.
Right.
So now the science is advanced enough, but mostly you find whey protein, and that's a good source of protein. I think the problem is not just to find a source of protein, but how to incorporate it in daily diets, right? Because we don't eat 90% protein as a meal, generally speaking. And that's where there's a lot of barrier. Like, are we ready to change our diets into protein powders? I don't think that that's the case. So we have to be mindful of our habits also. Um, Now, plant-based proteins, you can find a lot of protein powder, and they should be complete if they've done their research and science well. So what they do is they combine a lot of different plant sources, but oftentimes plant-based proteins have more of an aftertaste and a flavor relative to whey protein or other animal protein. So it's again a personal preference, but the point I'm trying to make is it's a little bit of water everywhere, not a drop to drink, in the sense that you are surrounded by information, and seems like we're surrounded by products, but it's hard to accomplish that in our daily lives. And that's actually why I started Equi. I looked at myself and how I eat. Like, I love to sit down and have a proper meal, right?
Yeah.
So does my kid, so does my spouse, right? So, and I think a lot of people too. So I try to think of that as a framework and how we can deliver healthy, clean, plant-based protein through that structure. So that's why we pick grains. So there are two advantages of grain. When we ferment it, and because also we put some science behind it, we create a protein source that's in itself is very tasteless. So you actually pretty much taste the grain, and you
Right.
wouldn't mind that taste, right? Because you're already looking forward to having that grain. The second thing is grains are, grains reach everybody in the world, and grains are really the most scalable option if you want to create a source of nutrition for everybody. So that's why we pick grains, and I think we're glad we did it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also looks like one day, like it's as you said, right? It's very scalable and universal. So I'm really looking forward to your launch in India. And would love to sort of share it with my friends as well. So you also mentioned that you would want to get into pasta and stuff like that. So what is the kind of fermentation that you do different from the regular fermentation that we do? So say for example, I remember my mom setting curd, right? And talking about fermentation all the time. So is this like a different technology that can be replicated? Because as you said, it's a platform technology. What does that mean?
Yeah, so how your mom makes, dahi or yogurt in India. So it's kind of similar in the sense that there are microbes and they are eating up the sugar or the starch in whatever source you provide. In case of yogurt, it's milk. In
Yeah,
case of dosa, it's the rice or the lentil flour we give.
right,
So what we do is we start with a algorithm. We
yeah,
created this algorithm, and so we take genome of these organisms that have been known to ferment different food, different types of food, and within that we first figure out which organism has the right protein in terms of quality that I explained to you before. So once we have a list of it, so just to give you a reference point, we've screened like 1,300 different microbes to date, and we have a list of 45 that are really good. So what we're not like going and using all 45 right now, because it's like from a technological standpoint, it's quite complex. So we're going through down the list one by one. And what we want to do is we want to pick the right microbe for the right grain, right?
yeah,
Because different microbes may have different behavior on grain. So currently the company is focused on creating a healthy wheat flour. So we're starting with yeast. And so with that yeast, we've created the yeast protein, and then we use that to create bread. When we come to pasta, because pasta is also a wheat product, we can actually take the same ingredient, the protein that we have, and then just blend it with the flour in a way that pasta is made, and
right,
create pasta from there. So our
right,
protein is a one-to-one replacement of almost 30% of the flour in a bread recipe or a pasta recipe. So we
right.
think this could like take us throughout the wheat platform.
So tell me, why did you decide to launch your own product when you could have really like gone out and sold your ingredients to so many existing consumer brands, etc.? Why do you think that was important?
Yeah, I've made ingredients my entire life.
Yeah,
And I think one thing I learned about the ingredient business is it's a little bit difficult for startups because there's a lot of requirements that you must meet in order to sort of partner with larger companies who
yeah,
then will take your ingredient and bring it to the masses. And I mean, ideally, it's a great platform if it works out. But there's a little bit more we wanted from the company and its connection. We wanted to make sure when the ingredient finally reaches someone's plate that there is a satisfaction of that product that the consumer should experience, and that means like creating the taste and the texture of the product, let's say bread, in the way we want it, the way we think it should be. There was no way for us to do it just as a B2B company initially, so we decided to launch with our product. I would tell you, however, that um, as we have sort of taken the journey, we've been in touch with many companies who are starting to ask for our high protein, bake mix. So we're actually starting to sell the ingredient as well. So and that's how I always envision the company. I think the business model could be evolved once you have a good product, and that's where we focus in the year one.
yeah, that's great. And then starting from 1300 and then getting down to 45, how long did it take you to get there? And, then converting the process from lab to market, what does it really take?
um, when a child is born, the age starts then, but it's really, it's been almost a year, right? Before it happens. So it's kind of the same with company. So it took from the start of the company, let's say it took a year to get that algorithm developed. We're actually still evolving. Our first metrics is to screen on protein, but then now we're going to add more metrics like protein with, let's say, vitamins, proteins with other. So we're going to add dimensions to the algorithm. So it's not quite done, but at least we've got a good start. But to your point, the whole like concept has been in the making since I would say 2+ years now. So
Wow.
it did take that long to come through and then really put it into practice and then test it out. But glad we're here.
And what did it take you to, physically, right? Like, where do you work? And what is like, if someone has to think about the manufacturing process and what have you, since
Mhm.
you're doing your own, ingredients and then even the products at scale eventually, what does it really take to set up all those processes and factories and what have you?
Yeah, great question again. So, the algorithm is in silico, so we can do it on the computer. But once we have the microorganism, we create the protein out of it. So that takes a lot of R&D, for which we have a research lab. And then we work with University of Illinois to avail their pilot plant, where we do a lot of work on creating that protein ingredient, etc. After that, we actually have to go to food grade facilities in order to make sure that our ingredient that we are converting into a bake mix is properly done and is certified and done in a clean, hygienic facility. And then the same thing happens when we go and make bread. So we use several manufacturers actually along our value chain in order to create a food grade certified bake mix or bread. And the same thing, we can go to a pasta manufacturer eventually, hopefully. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you also said that, to get or to get certified by FDA, it takes long and
Mhm.
it's a long process, right? Are there any things that people should take into consideration while approaching the FDA, in terms of timing or documentation or how was your experience like?
Yeah, I've worked with, as I mentioned, I've worked with a lot of bioengineered products in my career. And so US FDA has been actually really supportive of this whole new movement around innovation of food.
Yeah.
But then there are still guidelines. So just roughly speaking, what happens is if you are bringing a completely new product to market, the onus of validation of food safety is on the company. And so within that, they have a very clear framework of, okay, if it's a new product or is created using completely new methods like genetic engineering, et cetera, then you do have to go through a process. So I knew this, I knew what that process is from my experience. It takes almost, 2 to 3 to 4 years, depending on the product.
Yeah.
So for us, we were actually really clear that one of the main science that we are putting is outside of the realm of genetic engineering. And the microbe that we select is something that's known to have a long history of human food consumption. So because of those, you can say, background of our technology, we actually do not have to do any extensive FDA processes. We have a regulatory consultant who has validated that that's the right way to go about. So we can actually launch the product without having to go through extensive regulatory work. But anytime a company does create like a gene or genetic edited product, they do have to, again, it's a pathway and it's well defined and people should definitely look into it. But just to mention, for us, that was a conscious choice to pick the organism and to pick the method that would lead to sort of the least path of resistance from FDA.
Yeah, makes sense. And then, as you sort of transition to, I would say, lab to market, right? You obviously, as a leader, you have to track a few things just to make sure that you're all set, right? Things may go up, they may go down. It's okay. But what are those key things that you measured, say, 2 years ago, and how have those changed over the course of time, or things
One
that
of
matter
the,
as a company?
yeah, I mean, as a company, we are quite young still, like less than 1.5 years. But, I think the goal or the focus of the company has completely shifted in year one to year two. So year one, we really sort of spend a lot of time validating the original concept that if we use, food fermentation as a platform technology, as I explained to you, can we create um, staple foods like bread that are not only delicious but are also able to provide up to 10 gram of protein in a slice. So no other bread has done that. I think there was maybe one bread long time ago that used whey protein to do it, but other than that, nothing has been done with a completely plant-based source, complete protein, and all of those. So the first year was really spent actually validating the concept. And so once we did that, now our focus is on creating a business out of it. So we are very dedicated, I would say, as a company right now to launching the product. For us, there are 4 different, channels. So one is direct to consumer through our own website, which is happening very soon. The second one, over a course of 1 year, we want to get into retail stores, because we know and we understand that 90+% people buy bread in a store, so we need to get there. And then we also have food service, meaning like hotels or cafes or other restaurant chains where people go out and eat, are also on our radar. So we have very clear KPIs or business KPIs for each of those channels and how we measure traction, revenue, outlets, how many outlets, for example, we can reach in retail or we can reach in food service. So that's so in some ways, the shift, this is a drastic shift from just innovation and science now to a complete like business entity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also seems to me like you have to be very patient with what you do, right, as an entrepreneur, and specifically so in something so heavily deep tech. And so would you say that the mindset of a founder, like of a deep tech founder, is very different from a mindset of a, I don't want to call it, but call it out, but a Web3 founder? But I mean, no controversy, but really, I think it requires so much patience, right? As a deep tech founder. So, what would you say has helped you, or what have you observed, amongst people in the Bay Area as well?
Yeah, I think for me, and I can say the same thing for my co-founders, it's always you have to always remember why you started this, why we are in it, why we are every day fussing about why the bread is this way and not this way. So those are little things. I'm sure every founder experiences many questions every day. For us, just for me personally, I just want to remind myself why I started this. And I think what has worked for me actually is, as a brand, we're not a very radical brand. We want to be a friendly brand. We want everybody, like most consumers, to identify with us. We are friendly, but we're kind of providing a little bit of magic to your plate, so to speak, the magic they're seeking, and we want to do it in a fun way. And I think that sort of kept me going very well. I really have enjoyed this journey so far. I can see the same smile on every single member of my team. even the last few months have been really hard on us because we are, ready to launch. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of ups and downs, but I see them coming out with a smile. And I think it's in their heart. It's that mission that keeps all of us together and keeps all of us going. So I hope no matter what type of company you start, just give yourself a pat on the back and a kind of look in the mirror and say, hey, I know why I'm doing this. I think that should be enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would love to get to your decision, like your journey, right? To Equi, to starting Equi. So when was the moment that you knew that you wanted to start your own company?
Oh, I always knew, Shreya, that I wanted to start my own company. That is something I can tell you. And I've been working for so many years, and I've been manager, right? So I always used to joke with my people who were in my team. I said, if anybody asked me what's my ideal job, that ideal job is an entrepreneur. I would always tell them. Uh, and I actually did take that journey before. I started a company in 2014. I don't know if I mentioned to you, but it was a green plastic for creating eyewear, prescription eyewear, because we think prescription eyewear is going to be, everybody in the world will be needing prescription eyewear given how we are adapting to devices and screens, etc. And so the amount of plastic that goes into that is going to be enormous. So it's imperative to find greener, more earth-friendly plastic. So that was that company. I took that journey. It was the hardest thing I ever did. And I am a mother of twins. So I'm telling you, that was the hardest thing I ever did. So, but I think it kind of set me up to do take the adventure again, right? So I was always ready, but I wanted to also do more work going into my second company. So I really worked hard for Equi before I even launched it. I had an idea, I did a lot of research, and then I put myself up for a task every month that I'm going to go seek, this angel investor or this investor or this opinion or so gradually I kind of laddered myself up to the point where I knew that I was ready to do this mentally. My family was ready for me to do this. And then if I do it, I have like financial support to launch it.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of my journey. It was a process, actually, more than a journey. It was a process. It was not easy, but I can tell you it's been the most gratifying thing I've done.
That's up. I mean, that's brilliant, right? And any challenge that you faced, or because every day is not your best day, right? And so anything that you may want to share that'll help people in just getting there, right? Because when I was in the US, I was actually thinking about starting up as well, and thinking through ideas, and I was researching as well. And then obviously not, as I told you, not every day is the best day. And so there were definitely some challenges. So how does one really figure out the mindset that's required, or just be stable in some way, and know that it's all going to work out?
Yeah, like I say, you are very insightful. You asked the right questions. I think you really got the pulse of it. That mental stability is kind of like, the salt of this recipe, if I may say it. Every day is up and down. Every day is a lot of decision making with only half the amount of data that you need to make a fully, vetted out decision. So it's a challenge in that sense. But what helped me was, I would say, a couple of things. So one is, I kind of brought a clarity to myself that who are the people who I need absolutely to buy in this
Yeah.
journey for me. Like, so for me, my family, especially my husband, I needed him to buy in this concept that, okay, she's going to do this. And I spent time. I invested my time, I invested my effort to make it happen. And I think that that's the best way I could have done it. So that was number one. So have the right people on your side, whether it's your family, whether it's your friend, or it's your network, and then going into, building the team. That's going to be really important. You want to have people who are motivated, like yourself, to build this with you, not just to come and do a job. So having the right people on your side is number one. Number two, I would say, what keeps me like really positive is I kind of take a mental you can say I do like a mental math every day. Is okay, this is the problem, but look what we have achieved, and are we on the track that we think we can make something that can make people happy, right? So to measure every challenge against the progress, and if I'm netting out on the positive side, I think I don't have to like think about it anymore. I know that I'm on the right path. So yeah, those are the two things that have helped me. I hope like they're helpful to people too.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you also take notes? Do they help you? I mean, of course, mental math is great, but do you also take notes? Just because like there are times when you need to see things, um, at least. So I'll show you how my wall is set up after the call, but it's like 10 post-it notes and then 10 here, 10 there. But would love to know what you do.
Yeah, so that's a flaw with me is I'm not a super organized person, but what I've been using to keep me on track, because there's so many things, that need to be done. So I
Yeah.
have a MacBook, and the task app. So what I do is immediately when I'm set up with a task that I know I can't do it now, but I need to do it, I write out that task and I keep looking back at it and making sure that I have achieved it. The other thing I do, so I give my team 100% freedom to bother me, knock on my door, tell me rudely if they need to, any time of the day, if I am blocking, like if I'm holding them up for a certain task. So I think, kind of inviting them in the process has also kept me on track. So those are my two things. I wish I was as organized as you, and I would love to see your wall.
Absolutely. No, it sometimes is a distraction as well, because then I think I was reading this book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And what it says is that there are like two types of mindsets, or two types of personalities within you. Type one is the personality that while you're playing tennis, it'll be calculative that, hey, how bad was that shot? How good was that shot? Etc. etc. You can do better. Why didn't you do the best today? And type two is the one that actually executes. And so apparently, if you're being too calculative on the type 1 side, then there is a possibility that you're not in the flow with your type 2 because you're over calculating. So you're not like going flawlessly. So if you remember Federer on court, it's so magical, right?
Yeah.
He has probably trained his
Yeah.
type 1 really well. Yeah.
Yeah, Federer, like I said, right? You're younger, I'm older. I still remember the day I saw his first game, and I was like, that is magic. Yeah, it was magical. I would tell you, this is something an investor told me a long time ago. He
Yeah.
said that most founders must be and have to be biased to action.
Right.
And I've been thinking about this very extensively in my journey as well. I am predisposed to action. For me, like an action is the best way I could teach myself, rather than guessing what are the gaps going to be. And I think for me that's the best way to learn and overcome them. So yeah, I like to think founders, entrepreneurs are the personality type 2 who just jump in, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Absolutely.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the magic, right? Like you discover so many new things, and that's the adventure that people always seek out for when it comes to entrepreneurship. So yeah, it's incredible, but I've also seen that it's not in everyone though. But it's a great journey for those who take it. So one thing that clearly remember the last time we spoke was that you told me an interesting story about maintaining relationships with your ex-colleagues, right? As you were quitting your last job and
Mm.
then starting to work on Equi. Why do you think that's important? And, right now in today's world, when we have so much going on and our
Mm.
calendars are some calendars are always full, right? How do we allocate time to building relationships? Because those are also important, and specifically so with people you know so well. um how do you, and in fact, just the day before, I met with a friend who was like who was visiting India for 5 or 6 days from the US, and he was like,
Mm.
I'm so bad at keeping in touch, but I would want to, I just don't know how. So how do you do that, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, for me, I would say, one thing is the quality of the relationship is more important than the frequency with which I maintain that, but the intention and the quality. So I was always intentional about relationships, not, of course, all relationships, but some. And the reason why, um, you kind of learn that everything in this day and age is an outcome of network effect, and that goes with not just products, not just brands, right? Not, but it goes with our own reputation.
Yeah.
And as a founder, my reputation was pretty much the only thing that investors had when I started this. Like when I went out and sought the first $1 million for the company, they were literally betting on me. And so where would they get that feedback? Where would they get their data? And it's through my network. I think having those relationships um, that are really deep, relationships that are profound, that are created through positive and right intentions are the best thing. I really encourage everyone, regardless of whether you're founder, whether whoever, whichever stage of your career, even if you're homemaker, it doesn't matter. They bring authenticity to relationships. Those relationships matter the most, I think, in life. They'll always serve us well. Um, for me, that has stood true. One of my first hire was a person I had worked 15 years ago. And in between, I literally was not in touch, but I worked with him 15 years ago. I felt like I needed more guidance in that area. So I called him up. He started helping me. And then finally, he asked me if he could join me. So my whole journey has been an outcome of the relationships I built. Same thing went with my co-founder. I knew him. I talked to him about company even before I started. And then I told him, if there's a co-founder I want, that's you. And so he was able to come on board. So it's it's um it's the best secret formula, if you will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. um in a way, we could also think about our relationship with our parents, right? And they are the most authentic ones. And that's why, even if we are, thousands of miles away, or, we haven't spoken for days, it's also your parents that you can always count on. So, because obviously, time to hai, but the authenticity. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. Um,
Yeah.
I think one thing that I'm actually curious about is just fermentation in general, right? And I see that fermentation is not only applicable on food products, but several other things. I also saw leather in fermentation. Um,
Yeah.
so, um, if you could just talk us through that, and, what are the several applications that you see, or foresee, for fermentation and products in the future.
Massive. Like I can tell you again how many things I have worked on that are created through fermentation. Fermentation was my specialty
Right.
in my professional career. I started by making biodiesel. So that would go in the cars or trucks, and then, is completely renewable, made through fermentation. Then I did detergent. So actually, the product I worked on was supposed to go into Lux, the Lux line that Unilever has.
Yeah.
Yeah, Unilever was going to put that in Lux and replace the palm kernel oil. So palm kernel oil is sourced from the forests of Indonesia. And so there's
Right.
been such massive deforestation. The fermentation is pretty much the only way you can recreate that palm kernel oil and the properties that are needed to have, an effective detergent. But ultimately, it didn't go that way. But that's the project I worked on next. And then I went to do omega-3 fatty acids, which as a vegetarian, you might recognize that's one of the most important things missing from our diet. And so what we did was we created um, omega-3 fatty acids through fermentation. And so at that point, at least, the company was selling it to the fish farms in Norway, which are some of the biggest fish farms. So even people who eat, fish, the fish is actually supplemented with these. There's just like endless applications of fermentation. And so the science behind that is think of anything around you, your sofa, your table, everything is made of materials or chemicals, right? Or some kind of basic chemicals. So replacing that unit that comes generally speaking from a chemical with something that's created from a microbe. It could be the
Yeah.
whole cell, like it could be the biomass.
Okay.
So in the case of leather, I've actually done leather also, or at least I've observed my colleague do leather. So I'm pretty familiar with that too. In case of leather, it's the whole biomass. So it just kind of comes together once you dry it to make something that is leather-like in properties. And then, you can do various applications from there of that material. One is leather, one could be like clothing, etc. So there's many ways. But the simple science is you grow the microbe, and either you look for the whole cell of the microbe to create your material, or you are genetically engineering the microbe to produce something like an oil, like a protein, in some cases, and then you take out or extract the protein or the fat from the microbe. So that's kind of the science of it.
Yeah. And I think fermentation has very recently, at least in the past 2 years, received a lot of interest from venture investors as well. Why do you think it was long ignored? For the I don't imagine, or I haven't seen too many startups say in the past 5 6 years, but definitely in the past 2 years they've definitely received some funding. So why do you think that was?
Yeah, I think it's all sort of coinciding with what is being hailed as a genetic revolution. So what happens is when you're trying to specially engineer a particular substance, right, and you want to take the fermentation route, you really need to come up with the clone that is able to produce in massive amounts the product of interest, so that when you actually go into the process, it's economically viable.
Yeah.
So one is that. The second is that fermentation is, in some ways, as I was saying before, one of the only ways you can recreate pretty much anything, right?
Right.
You cannot just say, oh, I'm going to make milk. How would you do that? Unless, right, like it's coming
Yeah.
from a cow. So the only way to do that is fermentation. So the genetic revolution that has happened, and actually we are leveraging some of that too. There's a massive amount of data out there
Right.
that is allowing people to peek into what's possible. So there are new targets coming up. So one is that. The second is, the science or the technology of it is facilitating the whole pathway to create economically viable, options, because it does take a lot of testing. So the cost of testing is going down. Those are the two reasons. There's fermentation has emerged as sort of the new, frontier.
Right. Yeah. I can almost draw parallels with solar and wind and how the
Mm.
costs went down. So essentially setting up the right infrastructure, discovery, and then also making sure that the costs are low, is
Yeah.
sort of what I'm hearing. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, what do you do outside of work? You have twins, you just mentioned. So how do you sort of make sure that you give them the maximum amount of time and love?
Oh, when they need time and love, they call me. Then everything has to rest, whether it's a meeting or anything
Right.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's like, first of all, it's a mindset, right? Like what's priority. And so I always know, for me, my family is priority. So if I have to spend a little less time on my emails or whatever, but I would do that any day. So having a clear priority is where it starts for me. But what I love to do, so whatever time I have, if I spend with them, or if they're busy in their homework, etc., then I like to do a little bit of workout and stay fit. I like to read books, especially my favorite section in my, or like genre, is biography. I love reading biographies, very inspiring. Third, I like to watch sports.
Oh.
So yeah, and then when I have time, I'd love to travel. I just like traveling a lot, but it sometimes doesn't, happen as often as I would like. But yeah, that's kind of one of my other loves.
Do you play a sport?
Oh, in India, I used to play. I wasn't a very good sports person, but I was on many different many different teams. I played, you may laugh at me, or you may not even know this, but I used to play Coco a
Oh,
lot.
it was my favorite. I was the top Coco player in my house and my school, high school.
Now we have another connection. That's
Yeah.
awesome. What else did you
I,
play?
I remember, sorry, what do you
No, I
say?
was saying, what else did you play? I'd love to know.
I swam, I played Coco, and then I played, I don't know if you know dodgeball, what dodgeball is.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I
dodgeball,
used to
yeah.
play that, and I used to run. So I used to run only 100 meters though, so I couldn't do like long distances. But yeah, so that was my thing. I was a fast runner. So yeah. But I think Coco was crazy. I remember even playing it at home. So I come from a joint family, and so I had two cousins my age, and I remember putting chairs in between us just to make sure that we are sort of replicating like a 6 or 7 member team. I used to like play Coco. It was crazy. It was our favorite game.
Let's declare it as the greatest sport that hasn't
Absolutely,
yet
let's do
been
that.
globally discovered.
Let's do that.
I thought it was so much fun, so much technique, and so many different kind of skills. I wasn't necessarily the fastest player in there, or like the one with the most stamina who could survive, but I had very long arms, so my coach was
Wow.
able to utilize my skills really well. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. I played for my school team. I played a lot of, state level championships there. Then I went to actually a handball championship one time, national handball championship. I was in seventh grade,
Oh,
and me and like my friend, we were the youngest on that team. It was so much fun. I used to be one of the relay racers, 4x100 relay,
oh
uh,
wow.
on my team. I tried long jump, it wasn't my thing. And then, eventually, as ninth grade happened, then sports slowed down. But I think I always tell my kids that I think because I played sport, even though I wasn't necessarily, the best talent, I think that it has helped me. It gave me that mindset that you can do this, and, staying fit, like being conscious about staying fit. All of that came from sports. So I'm just like grateful for that experience.
Absolutely. And then you also mentioned you like biographies, and so do I. Which is the last one you read?
It's the actually, it's kind of a biography, and it's kind of also like a lifestyle thing, but it's written by one of my friend, Angie Morgan. She is an ex-Marine Corps. So, like in India, there are a lot of like divisions of army here. So she was a Marine Corps, and like just an amazing woman. And I met her in my past company, because she's now a coach. Like she coaches teams, executive teams, people. So I met her because she was coaching at that time my team, and so we became friends. And she wrote this book called Bet on You. You should try to grab it. It might be on Amazon India as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she wrote Bet on You, and there she describes like her experience, and how that can translate into creating this path where you take a risk in life. So and that risk doesn't have to be a negative thing. It could really be that reward that we are seeking. And so how to create that pathway. So that's the last one I read.
Yeah.
So inspiring, like, and so methodical. Like I felt like, hey, I might have done a lot of these things, but I never thought about it so methodically as her. So
Yeah.
I always learn from her how to, be really disciplined in execution through mental framework, bringing more discipline to what we do, what we think, what we want.
Thank you so much for taking the time. What time is it there?
It's 9:04.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. Great chatting.
Oh, thank you. I am so inspired by you, Shreya. You are like, I don't know, so many things packed into one. Every time I learn so much more about you. Today, I learned you're a sports person as well, and sprinter, and yeah, so amazing, so inspiring. And thank you for giving me this, chance to bring my journey to India. That's what I'm really excited about. I just, yeah, really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should catch up the next time you're in Delhi.